Hi everybody, I'm Wood Boyles and this is the World History Project. Last week we explored causation and how certain causes led to certain effects in Era 3. Some of these effects led to the emergence of portable belief systems and a new way of organizing complex societies, the empire. We ended the week by focusing on two empire case studies, Han China and ancient Rome. This week, we're going to tear all that apart. Our driving question for today is, do empires collapse or simply restructure themselves into something new? So, we've already established that empires can be messy and difficult to manage and control. But they don't always disappear completely, like when a 6-year-old comes and destroys your sandcastle. Well, unless you're ancient Rome and that 6-year-old is a Visigoth, then yes. The collapse of Rome dramatically altered the development of Europe for hundreds of years to come, or lack of development, you might say. But in places like the Islamic world, or Dar al-Islam, it recreates itself into something new and wonderful and arguably more successful than what it replaced. So, the traditional story goes that between 200 and 600 CE, or AD in Latin, Rome began a downward spiral and eventually collapsed, resulting in a loss of common language, a decentralization of government and loyalty, and this led to what we refer to as the Dark Ages, which were supposedly really bad and nasty. This argument comes from a book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, written by a British dude and published in 1776. Evidently, he didn't realize that the United States was about to achieve independence from Britain and smash their hopes of an empire in the Americas. Someone should have told his publisher to hold the book release a couple years, maybe till the war was over. But despite all this, his ideas became insanely popular and shaped, in our imaginations, why it was that Rome actually fell. Oh yeah, his name was Edward Gibbon, and he blamed two things for the collapse of Rome: a change in religion and a loss of moral virtue. Now, we won't get bogged down on what exactly moral virtue is, but these causes, Gibbon argued, weakened the empire and opened the floodgates for barbarians to invade. But not everyone buys the argument. For instance, the argument doesn't hold up in the Islamic world, which itself was founded on many former lands of the Roman Empire. But despite facing major changes in religion and cultural values, they never faced the long-term suffering and loss of learning that Western Europe experienced. Another great counterargument is how Chinese popular culture saw the fall of the Han Dynasty as just being another phase in the dynastic cycle of collapse and rebirth. So another dynasty eventually took their place. So this brings us to our word of the day, restructure, or restructuring as it appears in our question today. It simply means to organize something differently, and is one example of what might happen after a collapse. Instead of utter destruction and apocalyptic bad stuff, things just change. The center of power might shift, a new family or leader might take over, cultural practices might change, but the people live on, and new experiences and communities and networks emerge. So today I want you to watch the Era 4 overview in Khan Academy, which should get you acquainted with collapsing empires. Focus on the question of the day: are these empires collapsing, or are they just organizing themselves differently, or restructuring? Then, in your historian's journal, answer this: how might COVID-19 represent restructuring on a global scale? What kinds of changes are you seeing in your community? Are people changing their habits, and are some of these changes good? I really appreciate the change of pace in my community. My friends, and yes, I have them, call or text to check on me, and I've heard from folks that I haven't spoken to in years. We're wearing masks out in public, which isn't normal for me, but plenty of cultures covered their faces in public for various reasons, so it's not unheard of. I'm no longer expected to shake anyone's hand for obvious reasons, but this might be a change I'd like to keep even after the pandemic is over. Maybe we can bow or make silly faces at each other or hand gestures. I don't know. But the point is that even though we've been asked to change a lot of our normal ways of life, we can focus on some of the good that is coming out of this period of restructuring. I'll see you next time.